The hall was filled with light and music. Flags of many alien nations hung from the golden ceiling. It was the royal bonding ceremony of the Zalari Empire. Princes and princesses stood proudly on the stage, waiting to meet their future partners. But one princess was missing from the stage. Her name was Princess Sero. She was the youngest daughter of the Empress. She was also blind, and her legs were weak from birth. Because of this, no one wanted to bond with her. Not for love, not for politics, not even for pity. Behind the bright stage, deep inside the palace, Sera sat alone in her chamber. She heard the cheers outside, the music and the speeches, but none of it was for her. Her maid whispered gently. They didn't add your name to the list again. My lady Sera nodded without emotion. I didn't expect them to. She had learned long ago that she was seen as broken. Other princesses were tall, beautiful, strong. They had no trouble walking, dancing, or charming guests. Sera, on the other hand, walked with braces, spoke little, and could only see darkness. Many thought she was cursed. Some even called her a shame to the royal bloodline. She remembered the words of her eldest sister. No one will ever want you, Sera. Not like this. It used to hurt, but now she had accepted it like cold air in winter. She survived quietly, day by day, without expecting anything good, but that night, something changed. While everyone cheered for the main bonding event, a new guest arrived. He was a human, tall, with messy brown hair and a calm face. His name was Commander Jack Hale, a representative from Earth. He had come late because of delays in space travel. He apologized to the palace guards and walked through the halls. As he passed the grand chamber, he noticed something strange. A soft melody was playing from a nearby room, not part of the celebration. Curious, he followed the sound. The guards stopped him. That's the blind princess's chamber. Sir, she's not part of the event. Jack raised an eyebrow. She's not. Why? The guard hesitated. She is not fit for bonding. Jack didn't answer. He just kept walking. He knocked gently and asked, "May I come in?" Sera, sitting by the window, was surprised. No one ever came to her without an order. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice low and careful. "Jack Hale, from Earth," he said kindly. "I heard your music." Sera tilted her head. "You're not here to laugh at me?" Jack smiled. "No, I don't find music funny." He stepped inside and noticed the way she sat straight, proud but quiet like a shadow. He saw the silver braces on her legs and the white film in her eyes, but he didn't flinch, didn't stare. He just sat down across from her. "What do you see when you hear music?" he asked. Sera was silent for a moment, then said, "I see colors." "Even if I don't know what colors look like," Jack chuckled softly. "That's better than most people who have eyes." They talked for a while. Sera was surprised how easy it was to speak with him. He asked questions, but never the wrong ones. He spoke gently, but not with pity. And when she told him she hated the sound of fake compliments, he laughed. "Then I'll give you none," he said. "Only honesty. Outside, the palace nobles noticed Jack's absence from the stage. Someone whispered, "He's talking to the blind one." Another laughed. "Why waste time on her? He'll never bond with her." But inside her quiet room, Sera laughed, really laughed. For the first time in years, Jack told her a joke about humans and translation errors. She couldn't stop smiling. Her maid peeked from the curtain, eyes wide with surprise. "Is that really her?" she whispered to herself. Jack stood up after an hour. "I should return before they think I've run away." Sera nodded, but her voice held a tiny crack. "Will you come back?" Jack smiled again. "If you want me to, yes," she said, barely louder than a breath. "I'd like that." As he left, she whispered to herself, "He didn't ask me about my legs, or my blindness. He just saw me that night, The stars above the empire shone as usual. But for Sira, something had changed. For the first time in her life, someone had seen her as more than her weakness. And maybe, just maybe, her story was only beginning. The next morning, Sira waited by the window. She didn't know why, but something inside her felt warm. For the first time in years, she had spoken freely with someone, not a maid, not a doctor, not a teacher, just someone who didn't see her as broken. She didn't know if Jack would come back. She told herself not to expect it. Still, when the door creaked open, she turned her head. And there he was. Jack Hale stepped into her room with a small bag in hand. "I brought something for you," he said with a smile. Sira raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "A sound device from Earth," he replied. "It plays music we humans listen to." He gently placed the device in her hands, guiding her fingers over the buttons. She pressed one, and soft earth music filled the room. Her head tilted as she listened. "It sounds like rain and light mixed together," she whispered. Jack chuckled. "That's a song called Ocean Dawn. It reminds me of home." Sira sat quietly, holding the device as if it were made of stardust. "You didn't have to come back," she said after a moment. Jack nodded. "You're right, I didn't." "Then why did you?" she asked, her voice small but sharp. "Because I wanted to," he replied simply. "And I like talking to you." That answer made her chest tighten in a way she didn't understand. Most people stayed away from her like she was a curse, but this man, this human, kept returning like her company mattered. "You're not afraid of me?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "Why should I be?" "Because I'm not complete," she said bitterly. Jack shook his head. "No one is complete, Sira, not even me." They talked again for hours. She asked him about Earth, about rivers, cities, sky, music, books, and laughter. He answered every question with a story, sometimes funny, sometimes deep. When she asked about colors, he tried to describe them. "Blue feels like calm water," he said. "Red is heat, anger. Or love, yellow." She asked, "Warm sunshine on your face?" He smiled. "And green?" "Green is life. It smells like fresh leaves and feels like hope." Sira closed her eyes tighter, as if trying to see through the darkness. Her lips trembled. "I wish I could see just once." Jack didn't say sorry, didn't say maybe. One day, he gently placed her hand over his heart. "Then feel everything," he whispered. "Let the world be known through sound and touch." The moment passed like a breeze, but it stayed with both of them. Outside, however, trouble was brewing. The royal nobles had begun to notice the strange human spending time with the flawed princess. "Is he mocking us?" One whispered, "No, he seems serious." Another said with concern. They reported it to the crown prince, Sira's older brother. He narrowed his eyes. "If this continues, it will bring shame to our line." Meanwhile, Sira's maids were confused. She had started smiling in the mornings. She asked for clean robes, brushed her hair, and even practiced standing on her own. They whispered among themselves, "She's changing." When Jack visited again the next evening, Sira asked him, "Would you like to take a walk with me?" He looked at her legs, then at her face. "If you feel ready." "I do." She nodded. Her voice filled with quiet strength, with metal braces and Jack's arm for support. She walked slowly across her chamber. She tripped once, but laughed. Instead of crying, "You're doing amazing," Jack said, holding her steady. She held on to him, her smile glowing like a hidden star. "I want to be stronger," she whispered. "Even if I never see the stars, I want to walk among them." That night, when Jack left the palace halls, one of the alien nobles blocked his path. "You are being watched, human," the noble growled. Jack didn't flinch. "Let them watch," he said coldly, and walked away. But behind him, A message was already being sent to the crown princes. Private chamber, the human grows too close to her. It read, "Shall we act?" The answer came quickly. Yes. By the third day, whispers had turned into loud voices. Every noble in the Zelri palace was talking about the same thing. The human is spending all his time with her, the blind one. He gives her gifts. He teaches her. He walks with her. The royal bonding ceremony was still ongoing. But no one cared about the other princesses anymore. All attention had turned toward Princess Sarah, the daughter they had once ignored, and toward Jack Hale, the human who had dared to sit beside her in the golden dining halls during quiet meals. Even in the royal gardens, everyone talked. Some were angry, some were confused, and some were jealous. The crown prince, her brother, was furious. "How can she be the center of attention?" he said, slamming his fist against the marble table. "She's not even supposed to be seen, let alone admired." An advisor leaned in. "It's the human's fault, Your Highness. He's building something with her. Then break it," the prince said coldly, "before it grows back in her chamber." Sarah had no idea what storms were coming. She only knew that she was happy. For the first time in her life, she woke up excited. She washed her face without being told. She brushed her hair and even asked the maid to bring her a robe in royal blue when Jack arrived. She stood with help from her walking frame. "You're glowing today," he said with a grin. "Am I?" she asked shyly, like a moon in darkness. He replied, strong, steady, and impossible to ignore. She laughed gently. But that laugh was not small anymore. "I've been learning," she said proudly. "More words, more steps, more about you." He tilted his head. "About me?" "Yes," she nodded. "About humans." Jack sat beside her and watched her fingers move across a small braille pad. She had asked for it to be made after he told her how Earth taught the blind to read by touch. "You learn fast," he said. "Impressed. I want to catch up," she replied, "with everything I missed." They sat together for hours. He described the constellations of Earth's skies. She told him how her people sensed emotions through vibrations. He held her hand. Once when she felt dizzy, she didn't pull away. In fact, she held on tighter. But outside that room, plans were already moving. Sarah's sisters had noticed the change in her. "She walks now," one muttered. "She speaks more than ever," said another. "She smiles," whispered the third, her voice tight with envy. "She's falling for him," the eldest sister said, her tone sharp. "She always was soft-hearted. She's still broken." The middle sister added quickly, "She just found someone who doesn't see it." The sisters agreed on one thing: they had to remind her where she belonged. That evening, they came to her room uninvited. 3 tall princesses in shimmering robes, perfect skin, perfect health and poison in their hearts. Sarah sat quietly as they entered, her hands folded in her lap. "You've caused quite a scene," the eldest said, circling her slowly. "I didn't mean to," Sarah said softly. "Of course you didn't." The middle one laughed. "But now every noble talks about you." The third sister bent down and whispered into her ear. "Do you think he'll stay once he sees what you really are?" Sarah didn't move, didn't speak, but her fingers trembled slightly. "Jack is kind," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He sees more than anyone ever has." The sisters laughed coldly. "Men say sweet things," Sister 1 said, "until they find better choices, and you are not a choice." Said another, "You are an accident." When they left, Sarah sat alone in silence. But this time, her silence wasn't weakness, it was strength building quietly. That night, when Jack returned, he found her at the practice hall, using her walking frame. She was trying to learn balance again and again. She fell twice, scraped her hands, but didn't stop. He rushed to help, but she held up her hand. "Let me fall," she said, breathing hard. I need to stand again. He watched in awe as she got up, dusted her knees, and stood tall. Sira, he whispered, you're incredible. She looked toward his voice, eyes still clouded in white, but her words were clear. I'm not going to be the forgotten one anymore, she said. And if the world laughs at me, let it. Jack stepped forward and took her hand. I won't let them laugh alone, he said with a smile. I'll stand beside you. And far above them, on the highest tower, the crown prince watched through the window. He clenched his jaw. The time has come, he muttered to himself. Tomorrow. We remind her that her place is not beside a human. Asterisk, the palace halls were quiet that night. 2 quiet guards stood still like statues. Doors were locked, curtains drawn, and voices were low in a hidden chamber beneath the throne room. A private meeting began. Only the most powerful members of the royal court were allowed in. The crown prince stood at the head of the table, his silver eyes filled with cold fury. Around him sat ministers, generals, and his closest sisters. Their faces were tight with anger and shame. Enough is enough, the prince said, slamming a holographic image onto the table. It showed Jack Hale walking beside Sira in the training hall. They're calling her brave now. Some even call her inspiring. A noble sneered, she's still broken. To him, said the eldest sister bitterly. And now others are beginning to doubt our bloodline, the people whisper. A minister said, if a human can bond with her, then maybe she is not so weak. They even ask if he plans to marry her. Another added, almost choking on the word. The room fell silent. The prince's voice dropped low. If that happens, she gains political power. She becomes a symbol, the general said, and he becomes a legend, which we cannot allow. The prince growled. A plan was formed in that room, silent, sharp, and cruel. They would not hurt her, not directly. That would bring dishonor. But they could remove the human, quietly, without scandal. Make it look like a diplomatic recall, the prince ordered. Or an Earth's emergency, and if he resists? The general asked, then make sure he never resists again. Meanwhile, Sira stood on her balcony, feeling the breeze. She could not see the stars, but she felt their warmth. Jack had told her once, the stars don't care who you are, they shine on everyone. She believed that now. She believed she had worth when Jack arrived. She knew something was wrong. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept. His voice was calm, but his eyes kept scanning the shadows. Sira, he said. Softly, they're planning something. Her grip tightened on the balcony rail, against you. Yes, he nodded. They don't want us to keep meeting. Sira turned toward him, her sightless eyes burning with fire. Then let them watch, she said. Jack reached for her hand. They may try to send me away. I'll come. With you, she whispered immediately. No, he said. If they exile you, they'll hurt you. Or worse. They stood together in silence. Then Jack pulled something from his pocket. A thin ring, made of polished metal and braided crystal. This is from Earth, he said. We call it a promise ring. He placed it in her palm. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but I want you to know I will come back. No matter what, Sira didn't speak. She only held the ring to her heart and nodded once. The next morning, the trap was set. An Earth envoy arrived at the palace. Gates with urgent news. An emergency message had been sent. Jack was needed back immediately. Only. Jack had never sent that message. I didn't authorize this, he told the envoy. They shrugged. It came through official channels. Jack tried to argue, but the palace guards surrounded him. You have no choice, the royal officer said. Your ship leaves in 2 hours. He turned one last time to look at the palace tower. Far above, he saw a flicker of blue silk, the color of Sira's favorite robe. She was watching, even if she couldn't see. She knew. That night, Sira waited and waited, but Jack never returned, the room felt colder than ever. A maid whispered. "He left, my lady," another added. He didn't even say goodbye, but Sira did not believe them. Her heart was too loud, too full. He would not leave without a word, not him. She stood slowly, walking without help, her fingers brushing the wall. Every step burned. Every breath felt heavy, but she kept going, one floor at a time, until she reached the royal prison under the east wing. "Who goes there?" A guard barked. "I am Princess Sarah of the House Solari," she said firmly. "I want to see who you're hiding down here." They laughed at first, then one of them opened the door, and behind the cell bars, bruised, chained, and bleeding, was Jack Hale. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Sira." She ran to the bars, gripping them tight. "They told me you left," she whispered. Tears forming, they lied. Jack coughed. "I knew," she said. "I knew. They couldn't break you without breaking me too." He reached through the bars, touching her hand. "I'm still here," he whispered. "I never left." And in that moment, something inside Sira snapped, not in pain, but in power. They had taken the wrong path, because now she was no longer just the blind princess. She was the princess who would fight. Sira couldn't sleep that night. Her hands still trembled from holding Jack's. She had found him chained in the dark, locked away like a criminal, and no one cared, not the guards, not her siblings, not even the palace healers. They had lied to her, stolen his voice, and tried to erase him from her life. But she wasn't a helpless girl anymore. She had felt the cold bars of the prison and made a choice. They had broken rules to hide him, so she would break rules to set him free. The next morning, she rose early, before her maids entered. She dressed herself, using memory and touch. She tied her walking braces tight and held onto her cane. Her fingers shook, but her heart beat strong. "I must speak with the Empress," she told the guards outside her door. They laughed. "You need permission, Princess. I am the daughter of the Empress." She replied firmly, "That is my permission." They hesitated, then let her through. The main hall was full of nobles and advisors. The Empress sat tall upon her throne, draped in golden silk. All eyes turned as Sira walked in alone. Slow but proud whispers filled the air. "She hasn't entered this hall in years. Why is she here now? She walks without help." Sira stopped at the center and bowed. "Mother," she said loudly, "I wish to call for an audience of truth." Gasps rang through the hall. It was an ancient request, rarely used. Only a royal bloodline could demand it. And only when injustice had been done. The Empress narrowed her eyes. "Explain yourself." Sira lifted her head. "Commander Jack Hale has been imprisoned without trial," she said. "I ask this court to reveal the truth." The Crown Prince stood quickly. "This is not your concern." "It is," she said, not blinking, "because he was taken for caring about me." More whispers. She's defending him. She dares speak for a human. Has she lost her mind? The Empress raised a hand for silence. "This request will be honored," she said, voice cold. "Tomorrow at dawn, we hold the audience." That night, guards visited Sira's room. They tried to stop her from leaving, but she stood at the door with her cane. "I am not a prisoner," she said. "Let me pass." They didn't dare touch her, not after the Empress had accepted her demand. She visited Jack's cell one more time. He sat up when he heard her approach. "You did it," he said weakly. She smiled. "Not yet." She passed a small piece of cloth through the bars. It was a sash from her royal robe. "Wear this," she said, "so they know you still mattered to someone." The next morning, the grand courtroom was filled. Royal family members, planetary delegates, alien ambassadors, all came to witness it. Jack was brought in, his hands bound, but his chin held high. Sira walked beside him, each step measured. "Let the truth speak," said the High Speaker. Beginning the ritual, Sira stood in the center, and told the story how Jack had treated her with kindness, how he taught her, supported her, and never mocked her, how he had been taken in secret, and how the palace tried to hide him. She turned to the people for years. "You called me broken," she said, her voice shaking, but he never did. She lifted her hand toward Jack. "I do not care if he is human. I care that he saw me as a person, not a problem." Jack, standing tall despite his injuries, was then allowed to speak. "I never asked for anything from your empire," he said. "I only offered my friendship to someone who deserved better." He paused, then added, "And yes, I would bond with her if I could." The courtroom exploded into noise, some in shock, some in anger, some in awe. The Empress said nothing for a long moment. Then she stood, her voice calm but powerful. "If the two of you wish to bond, you must prove yourselves through the trial of trust." More gasps. It was a sacred challenge. Few passed it, none ever had while blind, but Sira didn't hesitate. "We accept," she said. Jack nodded. Together, after the court emptied, the crown prince stormed toward her. "You fool," he spat. "You disgrace the empire." Sira didn't flinch. "You disgraced it the day you let fear decide who deserves love." The prince raised a hand as if to strike her, but another hand caught his wrist. "Jack, she's not alone anymore," Jack said firmly. The prince backed away, his pride wounded. That night, Sira and Jack sat quietly in the garden. She held the promise ring tightly in her hand. "I was always afraid," she whispered, "that no one would stand beside me." Jack smiled gently. "Then let me be the first, and never the last." The trial of trust was not a battle of weapons. It was a test of spirit, of unity, of courage shared between two souls. No one had passed it in over 30 years, and never before had a blind, disabled royal even been allowed to take part. But Sira stood at the edge of the sacred arena with her head held high. Jack stood beside her, dressed not in armor, but in simple ceremonial robes. They held hands, bound by a silver thread, one of the oldest bonding traditions in the empire. Before them stood the Empress, her face unreadable. Behind her sat the entire royal court, nobles, warriors, governors. Foreign guests all gathered to witness what they believed would be a failure. The high priestess spoke first. "This trial is not of strength, but of balance between hearts," she said. "You will enter the echo chamber, where sound replaces sight. Fear tests your mind, and only unity brings the way out." Sira felt Jack squeeze her hand gently. She whispered, "I'm ready." He replied, "We do this together." The doors opened, revealing a vast chamber filled with shadow and soft blue mist. They stepped in, and the doors shut behind them with a heavy thud. Instantly, all light disappeared. Darkness, thick and endless, wrapped around them. Sira took a shaky breath. "I can't see," Jack muttered. She let out a quiet laugh. "Welcome to my world." But she wasn't afraid. Not here, not now, because in this place, he was the one who had to trust her. She tightened her grip on his hand and whispered, "Close your eyes, listen, and walk when I say." Soft echoes filled the chamber, whispers, heartbeats, strange tones like wind and voices. They were illusions meant to confuse, to separate, but Sira focused on the real sound: Jack's breathing. "Steady and warm, left," she said softly. They took one step, then two. Suddenly, the floor shifted, a trap designed to throw them off balance. Jack stumbled, but Sira held firm. "Trust me," she said. "I do," he replied. Each step forward was a test. A false cry of help, a sound of a door opening, a whisper calling her name, mall tricks. But Sira knew this game. She had lived in darkness her whole life, and for once, that was her strength, not her curse. "Crouch," she warned. They ducked, avoiding a sudden wave of hot air sweeping above them. "Jump," she called, and they leaped over a crack that split the floor. "You were meant for this," Jack whispered, breathless. "No," she replied. We were. Minutes passed like hours. Sweat formed on their hands, but they never let go. Finally, they heard a soft chime, the sound of the center gate. One more step, she whispered. Straight ahead, they stepped forward. And the chamber lit up warm, golden and calm. The door opened, revealing the royal hall again. Gasps rang out from the crowd. They had expected failure, but here they stood unbroken, united, glowing in the sacred light. The Empress rose slowly from her seat. The High Priestess stepped forward. Holding a long white cloth, she draped it over their joined hands and said, "The trial has been passed. The bond is true." Cheers erupted from the lower seats. Guards, servants, and even visiting aliens clapped with wonder. Some nobles stood in disbelief, others in quiet shame, but the people now saw Sira not as broken, but as brave. The crown prince said nothing. His face was frozen, his plan ruined, his power shaken. He turned and left the hall, unseen, unheard. Sira turned to Jack, tears slipping from her clouded eyes. "I never thought they'd cheer for me," she whispered. Jack smiled. "They're not cheering just for you. They're cheering for what we did together." Later that night, in the quiet garden, they sat beside each other once more. "You were amazing in there," Jack said softly. Sira laughed. "I used to think my darkness was my curse. But now?" he asked. "Now I think?" "Maybe it was waiting for you," she said, smiling. She touched the promise ring still hanging around her neck. "I don't know what comes next," she admitted. "Then let's write it together," Jack said. One page at a time, and as two moons rose over the Zalari Empire, the people spoke of a blind princess who walked through darkness and led a human to light. Not with her eyes, but with her heart. The trial was over, but something deeper had begun. The whispers in the palace halls no longer mocked Princess Sarah. Now they spoke her name with respect, even wonder. She passed the trial, they said. She walked the echo chamber with a human. Maybe she was never broken. Jack and Sira returned to her chamber. But everything had changed. The guards stood straighter when she passed. Maids bowed lower. Even the nobles, who once ignored her, now offered polite words. But Sira remained the same, still calm, still gentle. Only now she held her chin a little higher. A few days later, the Empress called for a final gathering in the Grand Assembly Hall. The entire empire watched through live transmission. People across many worlds, Zalari citizens, alien ambassadors, even humans back on Earth waited to hear the decision. The Empress stood at the highest platform, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Today, we speak not of tradition," she said, "but of transformation." All eyes turned as Sira entered. With Jack at her side, they stood in front of the court not as prisoner and outcast, but as bondmates. "Princess Sarah," the Empress continued, "you were born without sight, without strength in your legs. Many believed your future was limited. But today, you have shown us all what true strength looks like." The crowd remained silent, hanging on every word. The Empress turned to Jack. "And you, human Jack Hale, came not for power or title, but gave something more precious, respect. Though not of royal blood, you saw what we failed to see." She looked at them both. "From this moment forward, let it be known bonding between species, between hearts, is no longer a matter of shame or scandal. It is a matter of honor." A roar of applause shook the chamber. It began with the citizens watching from afar. Then the younger nobles joined, then the guards, and finally, even the ministers and royal siblings stood to clap. The crown prince remained seated for a moment, face tight, but seeing everyone around him rise. He stood to his pride wounded, but his power broken. Sira felt Jack's hand tighten around hers. She leaned in and whispered, "They're not clapping for just me." He smiled. "No," he whispered. "They're clapping for us." Later that evening, as celebrations began across the capital, Sierra and Jack walked quietly through the garden. She no longer needed her walking frame. With Jack's hand in hers, she moved steadily across the stone paths. "I never imagined this," she said. Her voice soft with wonder. "What part?" Jack asked. "All of it," she said. "Being seen, being heard, being loved." He stopped walking, turned toward her, and gently placed the promise ring onto her finger. "Then let this remind you every day," he said. "You're not alone anymore." She touched his cheek. "And neither are you." News of their bond spread across the stars. On Earth, media praised Jack for his bravery and heart. On Zelari worlds, statues were built of Sarah, not sitting, but standing tall. Cane in hand, eyes closed, yet head raised, children born with differences looked up to her. Alien leaders invited her to speak on unity, and slowly, palace laws changed. No longer would anyone be denied love or voice because of their body, or bloodline, or birth. Sarah became a symbol not of perfection, but of truth, and Jack stood beside her, not as a hero, but as a partner. He never asked to be remembered, but he was by every girl who felt forgotten, by every boy who felt like an outsider. Years later, during a speech to young nobles, someone asked Sarah, "Why did you choose him out of all the suitors in the galaxy?" She paused, letting the question settle in the air. Then she smiled, "Because when I sat alone in the dark," she said, "he came and didn't ask what was wrong with me. He asked what made me smile." The hall fell silent. Then applause filled the room, quiet at first, then thunderous and far in the back. Jack watched with his arms crossed and a proud grin. She had never needed saving, only someone who believed in her.